This is the voice of the New York Football Giants, Bob Papa, and you are listening to the best throughout Europe, the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast. As always, we are proudly in association with Man and his Man Club. Let's remember it is okay to talk. And tonight we are 100% British. And as always, we are still 100% Giants. We're a week removed from John Harbaugh being named as our new head coach. And there's been plenty going on since then. We'll bring you all the latest coming up. No Kev this week due to work, but Shane and Craig are back this evening as our coaching staff are beginning to take shape. With Super Bowl 60 now set, it won't be long until the season is officially over and we can actually move closer to free agency and the draft and everything that the off-season has to bring us. Boys, how are we doing?
Yeah, not too bad. Can't remember the last time I was on one of these episodes, to be honest with you. It feels like it's been that long. But obviously, kind of the first time I've really been on since the John Harbaugh hire. Obviously, it's all doom and gloom. That's the reason for the black background. But you know, they've signed or that they've brought in the right man. And I did say that, you know, if Joe Shane got Harbaugh in, I wouldn't slate him. So I am not going to, and I am in happy mood.
God. Things that were not on the bingo card for my return to the podcast were the Teletubbies background being shown. God, I don't really know what to say there.
What's there?
Yes. Just that's an early derailment, that is, Shane. I mean,
you got to come back with a banger, you know what I mean?
That's a tangent in itself.
It is. I mean, I don't know what I was expecting, but that is not it. No, you're right. It is nice. It's quite alien for me to miss more than the odd one, unless I'm away. But yeah, it's been. I've missed it. I've missed it a lot. So yeah, and I guess in the interest of full clarity for everyone, I recently changed jobs, which is kind of taking up a lot more of my time. And going forward, it's actually going to take up even more of my time, which is why next month I'm going to step away from the podcast for a while. It might be permanent. It might not. I might be back later on. Obviously, I'll appear for the odd one here and there, and I'll still be in touch with the boys. But yeah, just for full clarity's sake, that's kind of where I've been and what will be happening in the future. But I'm really looking forward to this. Again, I haven't been on since the signing of John Harbaugh, and I believe that it was the only decision we could make this offseason. Like, there was no other. We had to go all in, and the only thing I can do, and you guys have already said it across the last couple of weeks, is you know, thank you to John Mara, thank you to Steve Tisch, thank you to Chris Mara, who I believe we have spoken up quite a lot on this podcast because of what he's done, and obviously thank you to Joe Shane, because Joe Shane was definitely involved in that as well. So I believe it's a massive thing for this franchise, and potentially you know, will turn us around. There's still a lot of work to be done. We've got a lot of people to talk about, and there's still more work for him to do, but I do believe that the 2026 New York Giants are going to look very, very different to anything we've been used to in the last few years.
Yeah, so not again. I've been on the last few weeks, so nothing to add on Harbaugh. We've had it all from me, but good to see Shane's back from his modelling career with his new merch, and he's back on the pod with this cheery grin that was also on the.
I'm sorry, but that looks absolutely nothing like Shane.
Doesn't it? So Aaron sent this to me earlier. Doesn't it look like someone's combined me and Shane together to make
a little bit? Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, I can see
that. Shane's cheery grin is real.
I love it. You love to see that. Put that picture back up again. I want to see that one more time. Joe Shane makes my heart go newt newt. If anyone wants any of this merch, I'm sure we could probably sort something out because these t-shirts and sweatshirts are pretty funny. But no, it's good to have you boys back on. Yeah, it's been a little while since you've both been on, and obviously you mentioned John Harbaugh there. Kind of before we get cracking, I mean, I know we've spoken in the group, and you've obviously just put your thoughts in about it, Craig. But Shane, John Harbaugh, happy with him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know he can not be, and it's really fucking weird because like coming off what was it, a 3-14 season, I'm like, I'll wait for September to come already because it just brings that new breath of fresh air to the organisation as to how we're going to play. I mean, even just simple stuff like his coordinators, which we'll come on to later on in this episode, what he's going to want to do in free agency, in the draft, and then kind of the schemes that he's going to want to be putting in place. And it just brings a massive breath of fresh air. It's a breath of fresh air that should have been brought 12 months ago, in all fairness. I think most of us were in favour of Dable being moved on then. They delayed it for 12 months. But it's funny how these things work out. Last year you try and bring in Vrabel, you might not get him. If you do, it might not yield any different results. It is kind of weird being on a 3-14 season, back to back losing seasons, and there should be like to the other NFL fans, to people on the outside looking in, that probably think there's a lot of doom and gloom with the Giants, but I do genuinely think this is a breath of fresh air, especially some of the things that you've kind of been hearing in regards to. I don't want to get saying the control that John Harbaugh wants, but he's obviously not coming in just at the same level as Brian Dable did. He's an experienced guy. He's been there, done it, and especially when I look at the draft, he's coming from one of the best organisations in terms of drafting players. There's a couple of standout teams for me that seem to do well in draft every single year. Ravens are one of them, Seahawks are one of them, and they're the kind of teams that you kind of want to try and take personnel from, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's all I'm going to say on it, really. We'll see what happens in free agency and the draft, and then, weirdly hoping to wish away the next 8 months.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in the same boat, that we are all looking forward to September, whatever this off-season brings, just to see what impact he has on the field, and what the product looks like on the field. Like I said, there's so much that's going to happen between now and the season starting, but it's a pretty good start to the off-season, right? And just on your background, Shane, what made you think of the Teletubbies, and also for the people watching? As there is 4 of us on this evening, let's decide who is who. So who is Tinky Winky, who's Dipsy, who's Lala, and who is Poe? Put it in the comments. Who do you think is which Teletubby? Why the Teletubbies background, Shane?
I don't know. I just thought, what kind of background is happiness? And I was like, oh, Teletubbies, blue sky, white clouds, green background, and a little baby as a sun smiling and giggling and laughing. Do you get more happier than that? And that's kind of relates to how I feel about the John Harbaugh hiring.
Nice. You're like a baby in the sunshine.
I feel like I've gone from I don't know if anyone watches wrestling, but like John Cena with his black tape background, and then kind of he's changed again. He's all colouring everything.
Yeah. You've turned face again. You've gone from, you had your heel turn, now you turn face again. Job done, well done.
This might be one of the geekiest things that I've said on this podcast, but is it just me, or does that background look like the Windows background, just with the Teletubby sun just like pasted on?
It absolutely does. It absolutely does, doesn't it? Was it Windows 2000 or something like that? No, maybe later than that. That's bait. I'm not getting involved. Now, come on. Who's Tinky Winky? Who's Dipsy? Who's Lala? Who's Poe? Come on, get in the comments. Who's who?
Does that then by default mean that Kev is Nunu?
There we go. There we go. We said it all. There we go. Kev is by default the Hoover that sucks it up. No offense, Kev. Absolutely no offense. But yeah, coming up later, we're also going to be looking at potential free agency targets in positions that we need to stay tuned for that. If you're watching live on YouTube, or Facebook. Get involved in the comments, as plenty of you are doing already. Send us your questions about obviously the rumours that are going around about about all the coaches and who's going to potentially be coming in, who's being interviewed. Get your questions in, and we'll get them answered. And don't forget to like the episode, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done already. And for audio listeners, leave us a review on your podcast platform of choice. Aaron, can we see you? 5 stars. There we go. 5-star review on your platform of choice would be amazing. As usual, we're going to start off with the latest news. And as he's back, we better hand over to you then to Craig. So over to you to kick off what's been going on.
Yeah, and weirdly, there is loads of news to go through because we've made staff hires. Now, we're not going to go through every single one in any detail, and obviously we need to talk about the fact that there is still one big position on the Giants that is still not been filled, and we're kind of going to have a discussion around that. But 2 of the big 3 coordinator positions have now been filled. You've got Denard Wilson, who's coming in as defensive coordinator, and then Chris Horton, who is coming in as the special teams coordinator. Now, Denard Wilson interviewed for the defensive coordinator position back in 2023 and apparently was Daboll's first choice, but instead he took up the role in Tennessee, and that left us with the man who had left Tennessee in Shane Bowen, and we all know what happened there, and I'm not going to talk too much about him because I don't want Shane's son to go down. He was released by the Titans this past week as new head coach Robert Saleh came in. If you look at his stats, though, I seem to have broken Dan. If you look at his stats, though, with the Titans, they don't look amazing, but I actually think that Denard Wilson has been massively handicapped by the Tennessee Titans, and I don't think it tells the same story. He's a very, very aggressive defensive play caller, and he was absolutely let down by the Titans organization. They traded away both starting cornerbacks in Conor McCreary and Jarvis Brownlee, and they traded away edge rusher Dramonte Jones, which means that their number 1 edge rusher for the season was Jihad Ward. Now, we've seen Ward, and he can be good.
Come on,
and he did have a career year with the Titans last year, albeit, I think, like 5 sacks. But he is not a premier pass rusher, so you really are hamstringing your defense if you're doing that. He did improve his run defense, which would be nice. You know, the one thing that we keep calling out for is an improved run defense, but we'll wait and see. Speaking of Hadi did actually come out and say a few things about Denard Wilson, but one thing that really stood out to me was the fact that he said the players should expect that if you're soft, not physical or smart, you will not play. And that sounds like a coach who's actually going to hold his players accountable, which is one thing that we've already heard from Coach Harbaugh, that he's going to be holding his players accountable as well. And you would expect that from a veteran head coach. But it just looked like we're going to have a bit of a culture change and probably a culture shock to a lot of these players. And I think one thing that kind of it emphasizes and really reinforces is what John Harbaugh was saying in his press conference, where he said, we want people here who love football. And if you don't love football, then, Joe, you can find a way to not have them with us anymore. And it sounds like that the defensive coordinator is going to be that exact kind of mentality as well. It will be interesting to see what happens with Dex. Jeffrey Simmons ended up having a career year last year under him. Dex obviously coming off of a very poor year, in all honesty. So it'd be good to see if he gets him going. But with what he was able to do with Jihad Ward and the other outside linebackers that he had there with his schematically, he must be rubbing his hands together looking at what we have and the potential that he has there. So I know it wasn't a consensus home run. I'm going to bring in Shane now because I know Shane wasn't exactly enamored, shall we say, with the hire when it came out. But I think we could have done a lot worse. I'll be interested to see what you think now that you've had time to process it, Shane.
It's not that I wasn't enamored with it. It's just there'd been a lot of talk about Jim Leonhard coming in, and that was one that kind of really appealed to me, a bit of an up-and-comer. the key thing is, and the most important thing is, and not that it really matters, to be honest, who the fuck am I, but I trust John Harbour. That's what it comes down to. You know, would I avoid Denard Wilson? Am I overly keen on it? Not particularly. But at the end of the day, like I says, I'm excited for what he's going to bring. He's been there and done it all. Literally, he's been there and done it. So you just have to be like, okay, you know what? We've brought this guy in, and we're going to trust him that he's going to be bringing the right people in. You know, I think his scheme's going to be interesting. I think, from what I understand, he likes to play a lot of cover 4, and I think it definitely might give Deontay Banks maybe a second chance at this, because correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Wilson likes to play a little bit of man-to-man coverage, a bit more physical press coverage, which is what Deontay Banks' game was under Wick Martindale. Yeah, so, you know, I do wonder if that's... I'm not saying that we've hired him for that reason, but it could just be one of those that, you know, maybe we do see the rookie Deontay Banks this coming year, and, you know, he does go back to what we saw. Because, you know, there's issues with Deontay Banks, but I do also firmly believe that the scheme that Shane Bowen put in place did not benefit Deontay Banks and did him no favours.
It's interesting as well because... Go on, Aaron.
I don't think this Shane Bowen scheme benefited anybody. Except for the other team.
Yeah. I mean, Denard Wilson last year, I think he blitzed at a rate of 30%, which was the lowest in the league. So I think that's something we'll have to get used to, in the fact that he will rush 4 and only 4. He doesn't tend to send many others a lot of the time. But obviously it seemed to work. There's obviously something schematically that has worked, because some of his players on that front line have done quite well this season.
But if 3 of your front 4 is Brian Burns, Carter and or Thibodeau, you expect them to be getting out. Like they should be winning their 1-on-1s.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's not the same as sending a 4 out of Shane Bowen's scheme, because he tends to play a 3-4 base. So when you're sending 4, it's still disguised who the 4th guy is. It's not 4 guys with their hand in the dirt all rushing. It's, well, there's 3 guys with their hand in the dirt. Where's the 4th guy coming? Are we bringing one off the edge? Are we bringing one through the middle? Is the corner coming in? And it's also a scheme. Like I say, it's a pressure scheme, but a pressure scheme on the quarterback mentally more than a physical pressure. He doesn't know who's coming. He doesn't know what coverage you're playing. He'll roll out of one coverage into another coverage. He'll play, even though it's zone, it's not a soft zone. So there's still an element of trying to get open, get free. You're not running free off the line. He doesn't necessarily allow free runners off the line of scrimmage. So it's an interesting scheme. For me, it makes a question on the. I said this last year under 3-4 scheme. Is could Kayvon Thibodeau have a life as a 4-eye or a 5-tech heads over the tackle with a Carter or a Burns outside him? I don't think he's a outside linebacker necessary in a 3-4 scheme, but I think it's interesting whether he could play there, or do you get what you can for him and trade him now, save the 14 million, and get in a true 5-4-eye tech to go next to Dex.
Yeah, I think we've spoken before about the potential to move Tibbs on, and it's definitely something that I think they will look at. But just on Denard Wilson, I think for me, I think like at the time, like I wish alongside Shane, I was kind of like, okay. But doing a little bit sort of more research into his scheme and into his background, it makes total sense, because he was he learned under Mike McDonald, and Mike McDonald was obviously the defensive coordinator with the Ravens under John Harbaugh, and the way he plays even though the blitz rate is what would you say 30%.
Yeah, around that.
The defense that he likes to favor is attacking. It's aggressive. They play press man in coverage a lot of the time. Like I said, they play a lot of cover 3, cover 4, and the pressures are very disguised, very well disguised. And I think that will suit this defense down to the ground. And also, like he's known to switch his base defense up between 3-4 and a 4-3. Sometimes he'll put a 4-3 out there with 2 DNs and 2 D tackles in there on the line. So it's almost like it's a flex defense sort of thing, which again, I think can really play into our hands if we really want to have those 4, like you said, have Tibbs in the middle, and then have Carter and Burns on the outside as those sort of like D-end edge rushers, and just mix it up a bit. And I think I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what Denard Wilson will bring to this defense, because he plays a mix of zone and man coverage, whereas before, like I said, with Banks, he played well in man under Wink, and so maybe we'll see his resurgence with Denard Wilson. So yeah, there's a lot to look forward to, I think, with him. And the more I've looked into it, the more I'm actually quite happy with his hiring.
It is on to you now, Dan, for the other one.
Yeah, Chris Horton. Obviously, the other new face on the team. He's now our special teams coordinator / assistant head coach. So I think that role in itself, the fact he's our special teams coordinator / assistant head coach, kind of shows that where he's potentially looking towards, and that's kind of like being Harbaugh's number 2. He's worked with him in the last 12 years at the Ravens, which, again, it doesn't surprise me that he's bringing in people that are familiar to him. And in all honesty, I think he could potentially be one of these people that are only around for maybe a year or 2 before he looks to move into a head coaching role, because he's been around for a while. He was promoted to special teams coordinator in 2019, so he's been in that role for 6 years now. And even though we requested an interview with him before, we were turned down. But then once Jesse Minter was hired, I think that changed and we were given the interview. But during his time at the Ravens, their special teams unit was, let's face it, it was pretty damn good. It was near the top in the league in terms of punt returns, kick coverage, net punting and kicking as well. The past season for the Ravens, they were in the top 3 for average and net punt yards, as well as being in the top 5 for punt return yards and average punt return yards as well. So again, looking back to Michael Gabriel, which I think we were probably a little bit surprised he was let go. Well, I was a little bit surprised he was let go. Looking at Chris Horton now, I'm like, okay, this is why you were let go, because you're coming from a special teams unit that has consistently been very, very good. And, he does have a previous tie to the Giants. He was on the 90-man roster back in 2012, and he joined as a veteran safety, but he was released in the August of that year after training camp. So he does have very, very limited experience with the Giants. But again, I think his hiring, it makes sense because he's worked under Harbaugh for so long, and I'm not surprised that he's another one that has worked alongside Harbaugh, obviously as Wilson has as well. So it's kind of setting a bit of a theme that we're going to bring in staff that either worked for or worked under or worked with John Harbaugh at some point during his career. What do you make of Chris Horton, Aaron?
Yeah, it's I think you're getting a guy that's clearly a trusted lieutenant for John Harbaugh. Obviously, special teams coach background. It's really, it's where he's obviously going to have a finger on it, but he's got a guy that he trusts. It's sort of guy. Special teams is really weird, right? So there's a few guys every season will make the 53 just because of their special teams versatility, not necessarily because they're going to contribute on defense or offense. And I think, to bring a guy like that in, trusted guy, it's also, he's going to be the guy that kind of helps make those decisions about those who are the guys that really do love football, that want to play for the New York Football Giants. And he's going to be the guy that making those Case Velasquez on the roster. I think, it's. I also did a bit more research. I can confirm he is not related to Tim Hortons.
He's Canadian, isn't he?
So you're Canadian, yeah. So there's no free iced coffee or Timbit donuts, which are the holes from the donut hole.
Timbits.
Yeah, I think special teams, right? I think it is a third of the. They always say it's the third phase, right?
Yeah.
I think the example and something that I like about John Harbaugh, and it clearly reads over because obviously the 90-man roster. Again, you're going to turn over more guys on the special teams in preseason on that special teams unit than you are at any other point in the season, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you need to kind of see if guys are going to make the roster. The Ravens went something like 21 straight wins in preseason under John Harbaugh. Obviously, with the guys involved in special teams, you don't win preseason games without having your special teams sorted out. Because they're quite a low-scoring games. You've got, if you mess up a kickoff, a punt return, a field position, you can lose a preseason game fairly easily. They won 21 odd in a row. Like, it was some ridiculous record where they went in preseason. I've known for years, always, if you're gonna put a bet on in preseason, always back the Ravens to win, because it was always like a nailed-on thing that I think they lost. Like I say, I think they lost 2 out of about 30 in that 21 straight run. So that gives you a measure of not necessarily, how much difference does a special teams coordinator make on the actual special teams plays. It's about how you get your guys prepared, how the guys are buying into the team cultures. No one realistically enjoys playing special teams. Like it's not why the guys worked hard in college. Long snapper, kicker, punter aside, they all want to be on the team for whatever their primary skill is.
Mm-hmm.
So to get people motivated, fired up on that kind of thing, it takes a special kind of person to want to be a special teams coordinator, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we've seen the issues that we've had with kickers, and I think that's probably one of the main reasons that the Gober was probably let go. But Craig, it's going to be nice to have a coordinator that's pretty well known for having consistent kickers in his team. Obviously had Justin Tucker on the Ravens for a long time. So, Chris Horton, you happy with that?
Yeah, I have no issue with it. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to get too deep about special teams coordinators. I think Gober is unlucky. I think a lot of the issues that stem from special teams potentially weren't his fault. It was more roster management side of things, and it brought an unwanted negative air towards his unit, essentially, because of the turnover at kicker. Jamie Gillan obviously not performing as well as you hoped. The hilarious thing is that the one consistent across the years has been Casey Kreiter. And I honestly, I would be quite perfectly happy with Casey coming back, but I do think it's time for a fresh start there. And there is one thing that John Harbaugh, obviously being a special teams coordinator himself before he became a head coach, is going to focus on, and that is the fact that he will want his special teamers to contribute. And the Ravens were always very, very well known for being able to find special teamers that will contribute in both the defensive and offensive phases as well. So, yeah, I've got no issue with it at all.
Yeah, exactly. And I swear, when you see a field goal being blocked or a punt being blocked, during the season, I swear, I've seen the Ravens do that more than any other team. So I think it shows that they're maybe a well-drilled, well-oiled machine. The fact that they had 2 special teams minds on board the Ravens, now we've got those minds on the Giants, and maybe we can put a little bit of focus on special teams and make sure we nail it down. Shane, your thoughts? If you've got anything to add?
No, I've got no issues with this. Like I say, it's interesting. He's come straight in as an assistant head coach as well. So it's obviously someone that John Harbaugh trusts quite a lot, to be honest. He's someone he obviously wanted in the organisation, and like again, it just comes down to the fact that you got to trust the head. If you're happy with the head coach appointment, that you're trusting in what he's doing and who he's bringing in.
Exactly that. Exactly.
Shall I fire through the rest of them? Because there have been a lot. There have been a lot of moves. We won't talk about all of them in too much depth because he has really started to put his stamp on this Giants team and mould the staff in the way that he wants them. We are still missing an offensive coordinator. We're going to get into that at the end of this little chat. I know there's also been a question in the comments from Steve, so I'll bring that up at the same time because it's kind of on brand. So offensively, Willie Taggart has joined as running backs coach, and Adam Schrack has joined the same room as quality control. Taggart held the same position at the Ravens for the last 2 years, so no surprises that he's come in. He will be obviously taking up that room that currently consists of Tyrone Tracy, Devin Singletary, and Cam Scatterboo, who incidentally apparently is recovering well and on track to be okay for training camp, which is obviously a good sign. On the defensive side, they've added Dennis Johnson as defensive line coach. He will take over from Andre Patterson. Matt Pease has come in as assistant linebacker coach and Brendan Clark as defensive backs quality control. So as you can see, there's a lot of the kind of like less visible hires that are also going on, like these quality control people, like these assistants as well that are being sprinkled in there. I believe that John Harbaugh's also brought across his assistant from the Ravens that has been looking after him while he's been there. I can't remember her name, but I know she's come across as well. Dennis Johnson, that defensive line coach, and it has come from the Ravens, so you can see that there is a familiarity that John Harbaugh is trying to instill there. He knows what these coaches do, and he wants to instill that. He's not rocking the apple cart, which makes perfect sense. A lot of the sort of kind of tweak hires, I would say, or maybe call them, will come a year or 2 years down the line once he's kind of bedded everything in. However, you guessed it, Dennis Johnson had been on the Ravens for 2 years, and that seems like there was a little bit of a change 2 years ago, and he's bringing all those across. But let's kind of double back to that offensive coordinator talk, because yesterday it was revealed that the Browns had hired Todd Monken, who obviously we thought potentially was going to come in as OC. John Harbaugh, it was his first choice. Essentially, he'd been quite aggressive at trying to convince Monken to come over. Obviously, Monken now gets that head coaching opportunity that he probably deserves, I would say, and wants, and you can completely understand why he's gone for that over coming in here as offensive coordinator. So now he's not available. The Giants have moved quickly. Yesterday, it was announced that Broncos quarterback coach and two-time Giant Davis Webb is being brought in for an interview. Now, Davis Webb has also had a lot of interest on offensive coordinator and at head coach level, so that's a no-brainer. And literally within the last 2 hours, it was revealed that Colts OC with the greatest name in the world, Jim Bob Cooter, has come in. Jim Bob Cooter is coming in for a interview as well. Now, Steve put up a thing saying any concerns on losing out on Monken. Some of the names were being linked with for OC. Now, it's interesting because Charlotte Carroll put a article out earlier on The Athletic that I was reading, and she was suggesting that the following people would probably have a shout for that offensive coordinator job. So you've got Tim Kelly, who's obviously the Giants tight end coach, who had taken over towards the end of the season as Mike Kafka had moved up. Cliff Kingsbury, the ex-Commanders OC. You've got T. Martin, who's the Ravens quarterback coach. Robert Prince, who's the Falcons wide receiver coach, who was actually hired this week. Now, he can still move again because it would be a promotion. I think that was probably a little less likely because he's obviously gone to the Falcons, but you never know. Greg Roman, the ex-Chargers OC. Nate Scheelhaus from the Rams. He's their passing game coordinator. Obviously, Willie Taggart, the running back coach, who is currently with the Giants. He's already been interviewed for that offensive coordinator position, I believe. Davis Webb, as I've already said, as well as Jim Bob Cooter. And then the last one, which is Charlie Weiss Jr., who is the LSU offensive coordinator, who was the Ole Miss offensive coordinator when they were Jackson Dart, sorry, was at Ole Miss, and obviously part of the reason that we dropped him. So, Shane, there's a lot there. I guess first of all, thoughts on losing out on Monken, but then who are you looking at for OC here, or are you kind of just trusting the process?
Yeah, it's disappointing. Look, I keep saying it on this episode, but you're going to trust Jim Harbaugh, and he obviously wanted Tom Monken for a reason. If he doesn't get his first choice, it's obviously going to be a little bit of a blow because it was his first choice for a reason. It was who he wanted. I'm surprised Monken's going to the Browns. In all honesty, I know it's a head coaching job, but
Shane, they've got a Pro Bowl quarterback. Why wouldn't you want to go there?
Oh, fucking hell, my bad, shit. All hail Shadeur.
Don't even. What a joke that is.
Thing is, that just sums up. We're off on a tangent now. That just sums up what I said about the Pro Bowl for years.
It sums up the Pro Bowl.
I fucking hate it when they're going, oh, and here comes Shadeur Sanders onto the field. He was a 2025 Pro Bowl. That means fuck all. It literally means nothing. Like, all Pro versus Pro Bowl, there's a massive difference. Pro Bowl is just, which fans want to suck you off the most or something like it's a pure popularity contest. It is literally no interest. Like, it's right though. Tell me I'm wrong.
It's no. It's a popularity contest at its core, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's got nothing to do with the way you played.
Travis Kelce got the most votes out of every single player in the Pro Bowl this year,
and he was dog shit this season.
And why do we think that is?
I think we all know.
Yeah, exactly. That's the only reason. He's fuck all to do with football.
I knew you got trouble when you walked in, Shane.
So I am surprised Monken's taking it. I mean, he's a head coach. But is it really? I mean, would it shock you if he left it after a year and then you want to look at the Browns in a little bit more? I know we're not a Browns podcast, but now Jim Schwartz is pissed off. Now, that's a guy I would have been really interested in being DC for the Giants, if I'm completely honest. And then I think I seen today, Myles Garrett said I've asked to be traded again. He only got asked to be traded 12 months ago. We got a new deal. He's like, oh, yeah, I've got money now. They've sacked your boy. He wants to move on. But I think the one that stands out, I mean, is it obvious who the standout one is here? I think it's pretty obvious who we should want as OC from this list.
Go on.
I'm kind of worried in case today, but how do you not look at Jackson Dart's?
There we go.
It's literally so obvious. It makes complete and utter sense, which is why I'm kind of worried that they're going to fuck it up a little bit like I thought they would with John Harbaugh when it was said they was going to look at interviewing him. I just think, you're bringing in an up-and-coming young offensive coordinator who is not only up-and-coming, but he's also worked with the quarterback that you drafted last year. It just makes complete and utter sense. What's 2 + 2? 4. There you go.
Before I throw it to Aaron, who is the worst name there, and see if we're still on the same page?
Let me have a look at the name. Sorry.
There's one that stands out that I'm like, not him.
I think all the rest are awful, to be honest with you.
Greg Roman's the one for me. I don't want Greg Roman at all.
I don't want Greg Roman.
Anyway, Aaron.
Yeah, so missing out on Monken, not totally upset with it. It's a head coach job, right? Monken, if he joined us as OC, I don't think he gets another head coaching job because of where he is in his career. So there is always an opportunity that if his career is ruined by his Pro Bowl quarterback and he's out of a job, he can come back as an OC down the line. That's not worried about it. Obviously, I think my big concern about not having the OC decided is the rest of the staff making the decisions about the roster. The coaches are not getting with the scouts now, going to the senior bowls, the East-West, into free agency. They're all bugging behind the curve on that. Hopefully, Joe Shane is and his staff are going to pick up that, and that will keep it up. But obviously, your scheme, what your coach is looking for, all of those kind of things, quite important. Charlie Weiss would be great. Obviously, Charlie Weiss Senior was a former Giants assistant on the 1990 team, 1991, 92. I think a running backs coach. So we've got history with the family as well, and obviously a respected coaching family. So yeah, it would be a great thing. I think the danger of a Charlie Weiss Jr. is he comes in as OC. If he's successful, he's a head coach next year. He's a head coach the year after. Worst case scenario, if with any kind of success that we have, because he's one of those OCs are hot commodities. There is no offensive coordinator who calls plays. So excluding where a head coach calls plays, a bit like Dave or anything that is in their job longer than 2025. So all of the offensive coordinators that call plays, that they have a very short time, either poached for head coach roles or they get their head coaches fired and they move on. So it's quite a high pressure situation to come in this role, but it's appealing because the best guy on the list, and even a Nate Schierhasser out of the Rams, I think he's a top candidate. Really good chance that he'll go from here to there. Just quickly, as we're a Big Blue UK and Ireland, we mentioned Jim Bob Cooter. Is there anything that's more American and less British than Jim Bob Cooter as a name? Like that is, you would never hear a Brit or an Irishman with that name.
I love it. It literally screams USA. You've done it.
Yeah, I don't know if you mentioned it, Craig, when you listing the names, but obviously there has been another one announced whilst we've been on air. Schefter tweeted about half an hour ago. They've requested to interview Colts passing game coordinator Alex Tanney. Tanney.
Alex Tanney.
Yeah,
so there's obviously a lot that they like about how the Colts did things offensively, and obviously it did fall off a cliff a little bit towards the end. But there was a quarterback that they really, really liked in Indianapolis. Obviously,
there we go.
It was a quarterback that Joe Shane really liked. He fucking paid him a shit ton of money.
This won't be the last you hear of the Colts tonight either.
No, that was going to be my point as well. It's like I'm not surprised that Jim Bob Cooter's in there, because look at the work he did with Daniel Jones. Yeah, granted, it's Indianapolis, but it's he's been around for a while. He's obviously been with the Lions before that as well, and I think he clearly showed that with the right quarterback and calling plays on offense, like he can do the job. Davis Webb as well. Look at the development he's put into Bo Nix, and I think that's a selling point, massive selling point.
So a lot of the credit of the 2022 season that Daniel Jones had in New York is the fact that Davis Webb was in the quarterback room as a QB, still trying to make his career as a QB, but clearly coaching. So. And obviously when he went to Denver, he was convinced to actually formally, hang up the helmet and become put on the headset permanently. But when you're in that quarterback room reviewing tape, going through game plan, all that kind of thing, we've seen from a number of QB rooms from Hard Knocks and other things like that it really is a really good QB room. The backup and the third string QB are helping the starter prepare for the game. And clearly we had some of that there. So yeah, it would be good to bring him back into the mix.
And even when Charlie Weiss as well, it's like if we don't bring him in as offensive coordinator, could you potentially look at him bringing him in as like the quarterbacks coach, and just to work with Jackson Dart for the next year or two, and because obviously coming from college into the NFL is obviously a massive step, and obviously the game is very, very different. So coming from OC in college to OC in the NFL is a massive step. So the case of, would you bring him in a slightly lower position to coach the quarterbacks, one of whom he knows very, very well, just for a year or two to let him get up to the standard that's required for the NFL? Is that something that Harbaugh could look at?
Yeah, he obviously isn't a play caller under Lane Kiffin, so he's been an OC that's almost acted like a QB coach in some ways. Anyway, I don't know if you'll get him to leave LSU just to be a QB coach. If there was a team that would be able to do it and a player that'd be able to get him to move, it would be Jackson Dart, the New York Football Giants. But yeah, I think he would only come to the NFL for the right OC job.
Yeah,
let alone a QB coach.
Yeah, I think it's one of those three I'd be more than happy with. I think one of those three would be a good shout. All right, should we move on and look at some free agents?
Indeed.
Because why not? Free agents that we could be targeting at the beginning of March. Obviously, we are now only just over a month away from the free agency period open. I think it's March the 9th. Free agency opens this year. With it being, I think March the 11th is when players can...
Yeah, the tampering period starts on the 9th. It's 7 weeks on Monday, 53 days if you're listening today on the 29th of January.
There we go. So, there we go. It's not far away. So, we're going to have a look at some of the free agents across the league that we could potentially be targeting in positions of need. So, Craig, kick us off.
Yeah, so I'm having a look at wide receiver here, and I'm going to open up with the fact that Aaron quite kindly turned around to me and said Brandon Ayuk and Odell Beckham Jr. are available and could potentially be targets, and I agree, but I have gone in a different direction. But I just want to very quickly touch on the Odell Beckham thing. I love Beckham. I love Beckham. I do not think him coming back really has much benefit other than maybe just being a coach in that room. I am very, very cautious when it comes to bringing back players that have done what he did for the Giants for what would essentially be, in essence, a retirement tour.
It's nostalgia, isn't it?
Yeah. So I haven't been blinded by that. And I also think that you boys are going to look at me with frowns shortly when I reveal one of my players. However, I have gone for a 49er and I have gone for Jauan Jennings, 711 yards, 12.3 per 9 touchdowns last season. He's a culture receiver. And when I looked back at so I actually had a look back at the last sort of 5 to 10 years and tried to pick out like the big free agent signings and the big draft picks that the Ravens had made at wide receiver. And a lot of them are tough. They're chess pieces. They move them around. They use speed quite a lot as their wide receiver one, but we have that with Malik Neighbors. So I've kind of tried to have a look at these kind of complementary players that fit the Ravens ethos, because that's kind of what John Harbaugh is going to be looking for. So Jauan Jennings is one of those because he's tough, he blocks, he wins third downs, he works the middle, he does the dirty work. He does the sort of things that the Ravens would love or used to love their receivers to do. I think he balances the room quite nicely and gives us a bit of physicality. He isn't somebody who's going to force a defense to change their coverage just for him. So I don't think he's a game changer, but he is tough and he just gives us a bit more of a balance to what Malik Neighbors does. Another player that fits this very, very similarly is Alec Pierce. And I told you it wouldn't be the last time you hear about the Colts. 1,003 yards, 21.3 per, which is mental that you can have 21.3 per on 1,000 yards. And 6 touchdowns. He is speed. He is a vertical threat, but he does do a lot with his body. And, he won't demand that kind of wide receiver one volume that we will maybe give Neighbors, but he will still get the splash plays. I think he's coming off of a really, really good season, but there are still some inconsistencies to his game. I'm going to look at the screen as I say this because I want to see the reaction. Deebo Samuel. Shane says it all. Right, stay with me, yeah? The Ravens love a chess piece as their secondary wide receiver. They like to move people around. They like to do backfield touches and motion plays, yards after catch, physical football, that kind of thing. Deebo Samuel can still do that. It will not be a long-term deal. It will be a short-term deal. He is getting old. There are injury concerns there. But you cannot tell me that last season you didn't watch a couple of Commanders games and go, you know what, Deebo Samuel's still got a little bit of juice that you could use. Like, I genuinely think that's quite a savvy pickup that could happen. And I know people are going to hate it, and I know I'm probably going to get pelters for it, but I kind of don't mind it. And I just wanted to look at something that was maybe a little bit outside of the box and not so cookie cutter as some of the other ones. There are 3 others that I looked at. I looked at Wan'Dale Robinson. I think we've seen what Wan'Dale can give us. I do think he might be a bit too expensive. However, he is not ranked very highly by PFF, and I wonder if that does affect his market value. In maybe the PFF have a sort of similar outlook to the rest of the league. If you want another veteran, you could look at Tyler Lockett, but he didn't really do a lot last year. He doesn't maybe fit the Ravens' skill set or the way that the Ravens looked at things, but he could be a good little addition. And if you want someone who's explosive as a potential wide receiver 4, Calvin Austin, who's coming from the Steelers, he very, very much matches what Hyatt is like, but has actually produced and did actually have 3 touchdowns this last season, which is more we can say for Jalen Hyatt. So maybe those 3 as well. But I would be interested to see how many pelters I'm going to get for that Deebo Samuel one.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I can see the logic of it. Depends on what he will play for. Coming off his, he's not been a cheap guy. And that's the challenge. And I think, obviously, the guy we haven't mentioned that might be the top free agent is George Pickens. I don't think we'll be in the market to spend that kind of money on.
No. I completely ignored him.
Yeah, he might. I don't think the Cowboys necessarily are in the cap position to tag him, but he'll be looking at top 5 receiver type money, and I don't think we're in a position to as much gymnastics we can do with the cap. Alec Pierce is another guy that I think is probably going to be top money. I think he'll go for more money than Wan'Dale. I think he's maybe 20 million a year type guy. I really liked him. I think the Giants should have looked to trade for him even last year. I think I was mentioned a few times. He's a nice guy, but it's not a great wide receiver free agent class, right? So the idea of holding on to Wan'Dale because actually we're in trouble without, even if we were to draft a 1st round receiver and keep Wan'Dale, that isn't out of the question. That isn't necessarily investing too much into the position. But I think Wan'Dale ended up at the Titans now. It feels like it may happen and go with Dable and give Cam Ward.
I wouldn't be surprised if it happens.
Yeah. So, and they've got a lot of cash to burn in times, although they need to spend a lot on their defense because it's rubbish. Yeah, but there isn't. Rashid Shaheed,
I thought about
Rashid Shaheed, yeah.
Rashid Shaheed also gives you special teams, which is obviously something that Harbaugh likes to have, good special teamers. But there is a guy called Amir Smith-Marset if he fancies that.
Yeah, a guy I've always liked out of the Vikings is Jalen Naylor. But I don't know if he'll fit in with us. Is he just is he better than Slayton? I don't know. We do need some depth in that wide receiver room because after Slayton and Neighbours, who might not be ready for training camp, although again positive signs was Joe Shane said he would be ready for training camp. After those 2, we don't really have any wide receivers except for some of the exclusive free agents, the there's some of the the undrafted guys that were on the practice squad that came through. So we're going to have to add somebody in this market. It's a tricky market though to find the right guy.
Yeah. Shane, just quickly, Debo, Jennings, or Pierce, if you had to pick one, what one would you try and go for out of those? Which one do you think complements Neighbours the best, I guess, is the question, because we do still have Slayton as well, which we kind of keep forgetting about.
Yeah, I mean, I like Pierce. I think he could be a good replacement for Wandale, to be honest, but I think he's going to be a bit pricey. I think Juwan Jennings could be quite an underrated pickup as well. And then, maybe even you look further, you got someone like Christian Kirk, who's going to be a free agent, could be a little bit cheaper as well. So they're the ones that kind of stand out to me.
Yeah, I think Jennings is the concern I have is already 29, and so it's fine for a short term fix, but I kind of Pierce is a much longer term kind of fix at it.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Some interesting choices. Debo Samuel could be worth it just for a year or two, but I like Juwan Jennings personally. I think, but it depends on the price, doesn't it? Really. Who's up next? Aaron. It's only right that you take the offensive line. So over to you, mate.
Yeah. So the guy that's been mentioned a lot on offensive lines, pictured there at the bottom of the screen, in Tyler Linderbaum coming in from the Ravens. I personally wouldn't spend the money. So the PFF kind of expected market is something like a 96 million 5-year or 4-year deal. It's more than 20 million a year for a center, and I know we want better than JMS, but I don't think it's that bad to warrant spending 20 million a year at a position when we're losing our right guard and right tackle if we don't re-sign the guys we've got. So I'm going to go down we might be able to keep Greg Van Roten. He's 36. From the kind of John Harbaugh hiring, him still being in the building, it looks like he's not planning on retiring. So there's a chance that he'll want to stick around. There's a chance he'll go to Tennessee and obviously he's one of 2 free agents that played 100% of the snaps on the offensive line that's becoming a free agent this year. So he will have value in the market. Despite his age, he'll get a decent 1-year deal, 5-6 million a year, I guess, to come and play another season. But I'm working on the assumption that we may need at least one starter. The big splash I've gone for is Elijah Vera Tucker from the Jets. So a former first-round pick. He did get the 5th-year option. He's only 26. He missed the entire of the most recent season, tearing his tricep in just before week 1. And the big concern is that he's only been available for 55% of games over the last 5 years. And we know what it's like when you've got a all-pro tackle that isn't available because he's injured, and how frustrating that is. But he played right guard in 2024. He was phenomenal at right guard. If he wasn't on the Jets, he would have been a borderline all-pro talent. And he would be an instant upgrade at guard. And he might require something similar to what Will Fry's got. So he could be on 17.5 million, something like 4 years, 70 million, something like that. But I think when we've got the talent at quarterback, you invest in protecting him and putting the money into that line. I wouldn't be opposed to it. Obviously, he was going that high in the first round. There was hope that he could play tackle. I think he can play tackle in a pinch. He has played right tackle when there's been injuries, left tackle is injuries, but he's all pro / Pro Bowl or even that does that mean Shane guard, but he's an okay starting tackle, and so you'd want to play him at guard and have someone else in at tackle. But that's the kind of the big splash if we're going to make a big splash on the O-line, and find the money there. Another alternative at potentially at guard is the former Bills right guard David Edwards. He's kind of a 12 million a year guy, so about 5 million a year less. But you could go and plug him in, and he would be a bit like when we brought John Runyon in. Way of bringing in a solid guy. Not quite as young as Elijah Vera Tucker, but not the same age as Greg Van Roten. You'll get a couple of years out of him, build that line, and then look to bring someone else in the draft along, a later round draft pick to kind of bring them along afterwards. If you go down the fact that we're not going to invest big in the O-line, a guy I really liked when he came out, former second round pick from the Chicago Bears, is Tevin Jenkins. He spent the first 4 years of his career with the Bears. He went so high again because he was a tackle. I always thought he'd be a guard. It turns out he is a guard. He signed a 1-year deal with the Browns, and he was a backup until week 14. So he was backup for Joel Bitonio, who had a really good season despite the rest of the line being pretty bad, or at least the tackles being pretty bad for Cleveland. But when he came in week 14, he didn't give up a sack, despite having a Pro Bowl QB who was sacked 17 times on 114 pressures because he likes to hold on to the ball. But Tevin Jenkins was not responsible for a single sack, and I think he only gave up about 12% of the pressures, which when you average that out across the 5 O-linemen, he's 8% below kind of the average, as it were. And again, he's a sort of guy that could probably start. We might not see necessarily an improvement. He'd be a bit like when we brought Illuminor in, where we went, he's a guard with a bit of tackle flexibility and hope to play him at guard. I think that's, you could maybe get him for about 3 million, and kind of be a depth piece. If he was the backup all season and you brought Greg Van Roten back, he'd be the first guard off the bench, and he'd be a really good piece to bring in. Another route we could go around right tackle. So right tackle for the Rams. He's been the right tackle for the last 11 years. 33-year-old Rob Havenstein. His run blocking grades dropped off a little bit this season, but his pass blocking still really, really good. He's been the right tackle for the Rams for the last 11 years. He'd be a bit of a mercenary bringing him in. He's not the long-term solution. Obviously, we think Bo has a chance of getting there, but I think we've seen enough from Bo this season to say he's still got some development. He needs to fill out his frame. He needs to get that NFL strength to be a true starting right tackle. So he could be like a 1-year mercenary, bring him in, pay him if he doesn't stay with the Rams. Another guy I really, really liked when I looked into the stats is Elijah Wilkinson. When I said there were 2 free agents that started every snap this season, Elijah Wilkinson is the other guy. He's come off his best season. He was a former undrafted free agent. His 10-year career. He started the right tackle for the Falcons all season. Not amazing PFF grades, but he's never been on a contract more than $1 million a year, so he won't be expensive to bring him in. It's his second stint with the Falcons. He's on a 1-year deal. Previously has been with Arizona, Atlanta, Chicago, and he did his first 4, his rookie contract while he was an undrafted free agent, exclusive rights free agent, all with the Broncos. Been mostly at guard, but he played right tackle this year. And again, it's the sort of guy you could bring in as insurance policy if you're going to go with Bo as a right tackle. He's the sort of guy that you'd bring in training camp and have them compete for that right tackle starting job. He wouldn't be expensive. It would be the budget way of going with the O-line. Risky when you know you've got your guy at QB. So, yeah, a couple of options there that I've looked at. And like I said, I wouldn't go with Linderbaum. I'd bring back Schlottman and run with JMS still for the money.
it's way too pricey for a centre. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah.
Especially when we've got needs elsewhere, and needs where we need to spend money elsewhere. So yeah, way too pricey for centre. All right, let's turn it over to on defense then, Shane. You got linebackers. Who are we looking at?
Yeah, so the top ones in free agency is Devin Lloyd, who's coming off a season with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Devin Bush is coming off a season with the Cleveland Browns, and the Kobe Dean coming off a team that we know a little bit too well, is the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, out of those four, it's going to be Devin Lloyd's the standout. I think Dean and Kobe Dean, he's had his injury problems, and along with Devin Bush, I think he's been too inconsistent. If you look at Devin Lloyd, his stats, he's really kind of grew into the league, so to speak, and had a career year last year, posted 89.1 defensive grade. He's only had missed tackles once in the double digits, but he's very, very consistent. Now, the problem with Devin Lloyd is he's going to be a little bit expensive. PFF's got him projected to be on 3 years, 48 million with 32.5 guaranteed. So that's probably a little bit too much for what I'd pay, to be honest with you. So while he's probably the standout at the top tier linebackers, I wouldn't be willing to pay that money. I think the money needs to go elsewhere, especially like we've already spoken about, wide receiver and O-line, if you're going to lose Illuminor. The one I'd make a play for is going to be Leo Chenal. That season off the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a linebacker that me and Kev absolutely loved when he was coming out the draft. He was drafted in 2022, round 3, pick 103. Some of it, Wisconsin linebackers are just something else. I just love watching the Wisconsin defenders, to be honest with you. The Leo Chenal's biggest downside is he's never played more than 527 snaps in a single season. So there's a little bit of concern there as to regards to if he can stay on the field or not. But there's no doubt about it. When he's on the field, he's one of those prototypical linebacker, 6'3", 250 pounds, likes to smash the fuck out of people. Like that's what you want in a linebacker. Now, his projections are 2 year, 12 million with 10 guaranteed. I think he'll go for more than that, but I'd probably kind of make a push, maybe getting up to say the 14 range. I think I'd be quite happy to be paying 7 million a year for him. The other route you could look at going is going for a bit more of experience. Now, the kind of experience one that stands out for me, he is old, he's 37 years old, but Demario Davis from New Orleans Saints.
Nice.
Just Mr. Consistent, like, he's constantly on the field. Last time he played less than 1,000 snaps was 2018, and he played 994. To kind of see anywhere where he didn't do really great was 2016 with Cleveland, where he played 786. So, you're kind of talking nearly over 10 years. He's been on the field for over 1,000 snaps, bar 6 snaps in 1 year. Coming off a year where he posted 99 tackles, 36 assisted, 11% missed. He always keeps that miss percentage at kind of around the 8 to 12% mark. And I just think, if you want to go for a bit of an experienced linebacker, which is what I think we probably do need in that linebacker position, especially if you're going to let Bobby O go, then Demario Davis is an option to go for. Just a few other names. I'm not going to go into their details or stats or anything, but if you want to go for a bit of experience, you've got Alec Anzalone coming from the Lions, Eric Kendricks from the 49ers, Matt Milano, a guy that Joel Shane's going to know from the Buffalo Bills, and then a player that we were kind of linked with last year, and I would have loved to have signed him and we didn't, and that's former Seattle and Washington player Bobby Wagner, 35 years old, so just a little bit younger than Demario Davis, but I think getting that kind of experience at the linebacker position is going to be vital. Davis's projection is 1 year, 8 million, 7.5 guaranteed, so I'd be happy with either Chenal or Demario Davis, and then addressing the linebacker position. So somewhere in the draft, I've got my opinions to where it should be and who it should be, but I'm sure it won't be that. But I think if you compare, if you can get someone like a Leo Chenal, Demario Davis, kind of in, and then you got a rookie as well, all of a sudden that linebacker group looks a little bit more stronger, confidence, and like I say, you've got that experience there. And then the last one I'm going to mention is kind of a guy who's probably bringing on a vet minimum, basically, and that's Willie Gay. He's drafted in 2020 in round 3 at Mississippi State by Kansas City Chiefs. Now, with the Chiefs, he did pretty well for the first 4 years, more so the first 3 years. In his 4th year, he kind of regressed, and they let him in free agency. In 2024, he went to New Orleans, and this year he was coming off a season with Miami. He didn't play too often, on 132 snaps, 13 tackles, 3 assisted, but most importantly, he had 0 missed tackles. admitted that he's only on 132 snaps. But I think, if you just want to bring in, if you could bring in a Leo Chenal, Demario Davis, chuck in a Willie Gay, that bare minimum, like 1 year, kind of prove it deal essentially, and then bring someone in from the draft, that linebacker group can look potentially a little bit more tastier, and you'd have a little bit more confidence in it.
Yeah, man. I love the Leo Chenal pick. I think he'd fit in that linebacker room so well.
So again, just look at those free agent linebackers with you mentioned the two pensioners in Bobby Wagner and Demario Davis. They both played over 99% of the available snaps, despite being two of the older, old by NFL standards. For kind of the most physical position, maybe after running back, which but they are. The age is just a number for those two guys.
And that age for those two is what?
37 and 35.
Oh yeah, ancient, fucking ancient.
Oh no, right.
I think, is there anything else, like Mail, what you've just said there? Does anybody else think it'd be such the Giants' way to sign one of them two and then they fucking blow their ACL out in the first week or so?
Oh, yeah.
Typical, wouldn't it?
That would be the Giants' way, wouldn't it? Of course it would be. Cool. All right, I'm going to finish up with corners then. And obviously with Paulson Adebo under contract for best part of $18 million next season, I don't think we're going to be looking at potentially splashing too much cash in the corner room. But there's one name that kind of I looked at, I was like, okay. Big play Darnay, Shane. Big play Darnay. No, I'm joking.
Run it back.
Run it back. Obviously the list of corners is not amazing in my opinion. The guys that stood out for me, Jamel Dean from Tampa Bay, I think he'd be a fantastic CB2, and I think he'd give Paulson Adebo a run for his money. He's been pretty consistent over the last few years at Tampa. Trevon Diggs from Green Bay, I think again, he's been pretty consistent with the Packers. He's on a big contract and could potentially demand big money as well. But realistically, I think we've got a really young, quite exciting cornerback on our roster already in Cordell Flott. And he made that cornerback 2 position his spot his own last season. Career high grades. I know the grade's not fantastic, 66.9 overall defensive grade. But let's look at what we had at the time compared to, we had Deontay Banks and we had him. They had a battle in camp, and Flott comes out on top. And I think he showed what he's capable of last season. I think it's quite shocking that he only just made it into PFF's top 250 free agents, because I believe he's a lot better than that. According to SpotRack, his projection for next season for a new contract is $9.5 million a year. And you're telling me someone that's going to get $9.5 million a year is just scraping inside the top 250 free agents? Something don't add up there. But a $9.5 million a year for a CB2, I think is pretty good value. And why go outside of the organization when we've got someone there that's ready to sign a new contract and just, we've seen what he can do, right? I think Cordell Flott for me would be first choice. If we don't re-sign Cordell Flott and we look elsewhere, I'm going with the Baltimore link here. Chidobe Awuzie out of the Ravens. Harbaugh's very familiar with him. His PFF grades have been consistently in the 70s and above in coverage. He ranked 15th among all qualifying corners last season. He is slightly older at the age of 30, but he's still good enough to be a starter in the league. Could be available on a 1 to 2 year deal. Very, very cheap price, $4 to $5 million a year for a CB2. Let's bring him in. Let him work with Banks. Maybe give Banks a few pointers. Maybe give Banks a little bit of sort of this is where he can be, and I think the fact that he's been on the Ravens defense, which we all know how good the Ravens defense can be, I think he could be a steal. I think he'll go for more than 4 to 5 million APY. But again, I don't see it being as high as what Flott is based on his age. And then lastly, I think it's one that I liked. I liked his dad when he played in the league, and I like him as a corner as well, Asante Samuel Jr. Now I know he had spinal surgery last year, and that's why there's a big question mark over him. But when he came back into the team midway through the season last year, he looked solid when he returned. He again posted pretty decent grades considering he just had major surgery on the spine. And again, he could be available on a fairly cheap 1 year prove it deal, $5 to $10 million. And he's proven that he can do it at this level. So I like all three of them. I think my top choice would be Flott, personally. But then I think those two others, they're both available on good money, and they could both bring, Awuzie could bring in experience and also working alongside Harbaugh and obviously alongside his ex-DB coach as well in, why can I not think of his name now? Denard Wilson, his ex-DB's coach in Baltimore. We might look towards that. He's obviously going to be very familiar with him as well. And then Asante Samuel, obviously, again, they're going to be familiar with him because he played for Pittsburgh, right? And they're the divisional rivals. They're going to know what he can do. So I think those three for me are my go-to. Don't get me wrong, it'd be nice to bring in like a Trevon Diggs or a Jamel Dean, but I think they're going to be too expensive for what we're looking for.
Flott's such an interesting one because if he is at 243, I think, out of 250 that PFF have him ranked, he's 3-4 million a year is all he's going to be getting, and at 3-4 million a year, I'd be signing him up to a 4-year, $25 million with 15 guaranteed, and I'd be like, yeah, great. That's I wouldn't even argue with that. I think at 9 million, 10 million a year, I get nervous about that for your CB2, and but maybe that's a position of where we are with depth. One thing that we've not been great at as an organization is retaining our draft picks onto second and third contracts, and sort of Flott feels like one that we should be keeping. You could make the same argument with Wan'Dale, but Wan'Dale's an outlier. He's the smallest guy for donkey's years to make 1,000 yards. He's already an outlier, and then you're going to give that outlier a big contract, a 15, 18, 17 million a year contract. Flott, if he is at the 8-9, I'm still tempted, like you say, Dan, but if he's as underrated as PFF seem to think he is, he's going to be cheap.
And the fact it'd be a re-sign as well, you'd hope he'd look if say the market, his market value is 9.5 million, right? You think here's 7 over 4 years with 15 guaranteed. You think you'd do the right thing and help the team out, yeah? You'd think, you'd hope.
Joe Shane's a hard businessman, and I'm not sure many of the players will do a hometown deal for Joe Shane.
Yeah, that'd be nice. But yeah, those are my three anyway. And I think Awuzie's quite an interesting prospect. I think I wouldn't be surprised if they do look at him. There we go. Yeah, that's our our free agents that we think we should be potentially looking at. Obviously, we'll talk more about free agents as we get towards the window opening. But just before we sign off, I do want to bring up. Obviously, it's kind of been it was a talking point for us last year, and we've got to have a quick discussion about it. Eli Manning. What's a guy got to do to get in the Hall of Fame?
But just beat Brady in the Super Bowl, surely.
Two-time Super Bowl winner, fucking Super Bowl MVP, 11th in all-time passing yards, and you're telling me he can't get in on the second ballot? What's going on? I think it's criminal.
I think the biggest problem that they have, and this is something that I was reading earlier from somebody. Obviously, another thing is Bill Belichick. You forget as much as I've said about the fact that I didn't want Bill Belichick to be the Giants head coach. The whole point of the Hall of Fame is that you can't. The people who are in there, you can't tell the story of the NFL without them. And I said it last night on a podcast I did with the Irish NFL show, and I said chapter 1 of the NFL is Bill Belichick at the moment.
Bill Belichick, 31 playoff victories, 9 Super Bowls.
Yeah, you literally, it does. And so that baffled me. And then somebody turned around and they said, look, I didn't vote for Bill. And the reason I didn't vote for Bill is I've been banging the table for these other 3 veteran players who are in the kind of older side of the voting, essentially, because they split it, don't they, into modern day, and then they have the legacy ones. And he said, I've been banging the table for them for so long that I didn't vote for Bill because I'm still trying to get these in. And I think the biggest problem that the Hall of Fame has is it's kind of a triple-headed monster. One, they have a backlog of people who should be in that Hall of Fame. 2, they have people in that Hall of Fame that shouldn't be in the bloody Hall of Fame. And then 3, there are some players who are coming through who arguably should be in the Hall of Fame as well, who maybe have a better stat line than Eli. They don't maybe have the better, top tier moments, but I'm talking about Drew Brees. Drew Brees will likely could get in first ballot Hall of Famer.
I'd be surprised if he doesn't.
He won a Super Bowl. The record, he has higher records than Eli. He has probably more All Pros. Probably has more Pro Bowls. I don't think Drew ever won an MVP, and probably should have done.
No.
But there are players that are coming up, and then there are also, like I said, that backlog of players who should be in the Hall of Fame as well. And I think it's starting to get way too convoluted. And I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of this. A lot of people have said one of the reasons that Bill Belichick might not have made it in is because they were revolting against this coach's eligibility only being 1 year after they retire, semi-retire, rather than 5. And it's that's going to cause more issues as well. Because if Andy Reid retires, that he's then eligible a year later, 2 years later. It's ridiculous. I do think that in the next year or so we'll see a big change in the Hall of Fame.
Well, I think the voters have disgraced themselves, and that alone is going to meet the clamour for change, for the transparency, the way they do it. I believe it should be an exclusive club, right? It shouldn't be like the NBA Hall of Fame where if you've played in the NBA you end up in the Hall of Fame, right? It should be
the best of the best. It's the best.
It should be the 1% of the playing population, right? But the thing with Eli and the thing about quarterbacks is what you do in September as a quarterback shouldn't count. What you do in October as a quarterback shouldn't count. It's what the playoffs. The playoffs and Super Bowls are what quarterbacks are judged by. The overall record at the end of the season, I get it, but if you throw for 5,000 yards in a season, that means nothing if you don't make the playoffs. It's not about individual stats as a quarterback. Eli, you take him and look at his playoff runs. He has the single season passing record for the postseason. He is the only eligible player with 2 Super Bowl MVPs not in the Hall of Fame. Right? It's clear his resume is Hall of Fame worthy, and it's far more important that is for a quarterback. That is far more important what you did in the postseason than what you did in the regular season. And he's a no doubt. And Belichick, second all time in wins, first all time in postseason wins, first all time in rings. Like, are we seriously thinking he's not going in at some point? So why are we waiting off the first ballot? I can get that Eli not first ballot one, a bit of a homer, but second ballot, right? Okay, yeah, he should be going in. The best coaching record of all time.
Yeah.
You're telling me that's not a Hall of Fame worthy? And forget what he did as a head coach. He also won Super Bowls as a coordinator. Like, it's not just his head coaching resume. If that wasn't enough on its own, have the rest of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Belichick thing absolutely baffled me. And it made me kind of start to lose faith in the Hall of Fame voting process massively. Because you don't, like Craig said, you don't have the NFL. You don't have the story of the NFL without Bill Belichick. Look at the Patriots dynasty that was created when he was there. And you're telling me that he doesn't deserve to get in first time round.
And you're telling me that the quarterback that beat that Patriots dynasty twice, including the greatest of all time quarterback and the greatest of all time head coach, you're telling me that the head coach, the opposing head coach and quarterback aren't going in the Hall of Fame? Ridiculous.
So my only sort of theory is maybe they're holding off Bill Belichick for when Brady's eligible and they put them both in together. Maybe. But there we go. Yeah, we can pound the table all we like for Eli. It will happen at some point because he deserves to be in there. And Bill Belichick, if he doesn't go in next year, then again, something's seriously wrong with this voting process. But yeah, I just wanted to just to touch on that because I think, like, obviously, with it being our greatest, well, one of our greatest quarterbacks of all time, if not our greatest quarterback of all time, it's gonna come down to his potentially his third year of eligibility until he gets in. So we might be having this conversation this time next year. We'll see. Hopefully not. Hopefully we'll be congratulating him.
Hopefully the reports are completely wrong and he gets in. But yeah, it seems unlikely.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't look like he's going to. Right. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for this evening. We'll be back next Thursday, I think it is, maybe Wednesday or Thursday, one of the two. I don't think we've decided a day yet. But to bring you our version of how to fix the Giants. So we're looking forward to that one. Anything else before we go, guys?
Nope, all good. But nice to be back on another long one. But yeah, plenty more to talk about for the next 8 months.
Yeah, buddy.
If anyone's got NFL Network, you can go and watch the East-West Shrine Bowl that's been replayed on there if you want to have a watch of the game. Obviously, Senior Bowl practices, it's all over X and NFL Network and what that. So yeah, have a look. See, there's some interesting guys out there, and there's still football. Obviously, Super Bowl coming up, but there's still football. There's still things that are relevant to the Giants going on in the background that you can keep track of. So yeah, it's still it's still not the dead zone yet of the kind of late spring, early summer.
Exactly that. Exactly. And also we've got the Pro Bowl to look forward to this week. No, we don't have to look forward to that. No, we've got no football to watch this weekend. Yay.
I think there are even players that had more interceptions than touchdowns in the Pro Bowl, so it's not even that high bar to get in there.
And the Pro Bowl's not on this weekend at all.
Oh, is it not?
It's been moved to the Tuesday of Super Bowl week, so it will be on.
So that just proves how completely irrelevant it is. Then
next Tuesday it will be on.
You want to compete with the Royal Rumble this weekend?
Yeah, that'll probably draw more viewers. There we go, exactly that. But yeah, it's
my money's on Captain to win the Royal Rumble.
Come on, imagine that'd be uproar if he enters. But no, it's been good to have you boys back on. Craig and Shane, it's been a while, so it's been good to have you back on. Enjoyed this evening. Looking forward to getting into how to fix the Giants next week. That should be an interesting one. Thanks to everyone watching and listening for your comments and getting involved. We appreciate you. We appreciate the love as usual. And my thanks as ever go to Shane, Craig, and Aaron for joining me. We're signing off. Until next time, let's go Giants.